This is horrible, plain horrible. And he's referring to the video about why Nehru rejected the veto power, favoring China over India. So he says that it's either willful sabotage, absolute incompetence, or a very high degree of childishness, or a combination of all three. I hope many people see this video. It's too damn important to be missed. Thank you, Francesco. So, yes, I did make this video about why Mr. Nehru rejected veto power and all the things that he did, the entire litany of goof-ups and mistakes and God knows what we should call it that Mr. Nehru did, that has hurt India so much. So I'm standing here at the Razangla Memorial at the LAC, Line of Actual Control, with Chinese-occupied Ladakh. And behind us is the Razangla Memorial. This place is India. It's free Ladakh. Beyond me over there, which you can't see, is Chinese occupied Ladakh. Had Mr. Nehru not done all those blunders, all of this, there would be no China nearby. All of these mountains around us would be entirely Indian. So Mr. Nehru, I don't know why he did it. We can list out all the goof ups that he did, all the decisions that he took that hurt India so badly, including giving away so much of Aksai Chin, so much of Ladakh, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, so much and so much more. Why did he do this? I really don't know. I am not in a position to psychoanalyze Mr. Nehru. All I can see is what he did. So, was he incompetent? Was he childish? Or was he plain? Did he have malified intent? Maybe it was a combination of all three. But the thing is, we lost so many lives. In the 1962 war with China, we lost so much territory. And this would never have happened had Mr. Nehru not allowed China to conquer Tibet. And why do I say that Mr. Nehru allowed China to conquer Tibet? It's because the Chinese were in no position to conquer Tibet. They were overstretched. They were too far away from their home base and they did not have supplies. The Chinese soldiers were starving in their attempt to reach Lhasa. It was Mr. Nehru who supplied rice to the Chinese soldiers, prevented them from starving and allowed them to conquer Tibet. Why would somebody do that? Tibet was historically for thousands of years part of the Indian sphere of culture and influence, the Indo-sphere, and Mr. Nehru gave it away. So I just don't know why he did that. Was he childish? I don't think this is childishness. I don't think it's stupidity. This is just plain, I mean, he stabbed India in the back by doing all these things. That's what I can tell you. Being here in this place makes me really angry. What a pointless and futile and completely avoidable loss of territory and loss of brave Indian lives. So that's what I can say. I hope people watch the video and learn the truth about Mr. Nehru, because we cannot afford to keep making the same mistakes again. The only way we will not repeat the mistakes in the future is if we know what really happened in the past. So that's something that needs to happen. Could you please tell your views about World War III? Is it about to begin? And it's a very long question, but the essence of the question is, what are the possible flashpoints that could trigger off World War III? So let's think about the potential flashpoints. So first of all, let's understand what is the definition of a World War III. So the first two world wars were wars in which lots of nations got involved. The Second World War essentially ended with the nuclear tests on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So World War III, by that definition, by that pattern, should be a war in which lots of nations will get embroiled, and it's expected to be a war that will lead to a nuclear exchange of some kind. So that's what we mean by World War III. So now let's understand what are the potential flashpoints that could trigger off the next World War. One flashpoint one can think of is, and we will consider all these flashpoints and see the merits and demerits of these flashpoints. Let's first list them out. One is the India-Pakistan issue. The second is the Ukraine-Russia or the Russia versus NATO issue in Ukraine, which is that's a conflict that's still going on. The third one is India versus China. The fourth one is the Taiwan issue. The fifth one that people talk about is the North Korea situation. So North Korea is considered to be a rogue state. So let's take it one by one. Let's talk about India-Pakistan. So both are nuclear armed nations and there is a disputed border. Pakistan occupies some Indian territory which India will eventually take back. So is this something that can potentially cause World War III? So it's quite likely that if India and Pakistan go to war, it's possible that there could be a nuclear exchange. But that nuclear exchange, I can assure you, will get over in 5 minutes. India may possibly take some damage, but Pakistan will get obliterated. And it will happen so fast that no other nation will possibly get involved in this. So even if there is a nuclear exchange, it will not lead to World War III, and Pakistan will be obliterated at the end of the first 5 minutes. So that's not something that will, in my opinion, lead to World War III. Let's take the Ukraine issue, the Ukraine conflict that is ongoing. So Russia is playing a very defensive game right now. They are not really trying to blitzkrieg through Ukraine and steamroll the Ukrainian armed forces and take Kiev. They could have done it. They've not done it so far. There is a possibility that the West or NATO may provoke Russia or may try provoking Russia into crossing the nuclear red line. Russia is not run by a madman. Mr. Putin is a very rational person. So right now the possibility of a nuclear exchange looks quite low. But in case something like that happens, one could certainly see an escalation of the situation. So that is something that could possibly lead to World War III, and that will depend on the kind of provocation the West does on Russia. So that's number two. The third possibility is the Taiwan Strait crisis. So that's something that's going on. The Chinese, we all know, they have made no secret of this, that they want to retake Taiwan. And the Americans obviously do not want this to happen. Taiwan is an American colony, American protectorate, whatever you want to call it. And if China succeeds in taking Taiwan, it could break free of the island chains that bind it, and that would make China, free to cross over into the Pacific Ocean and other parts of the world. So that's something the US doesn't want to happen. So if the Chinese try to do a military takeover of Taiwan, there could possibly be a military exchange. Japan could get involved. It's right next door, almost. South Korea could get involved. North Korea could also get involved. That is what one could call World War III. So yeah, the Taiwan issue is something that could possibly trigger off World War III. Then we come to the India-China issue. So behind me is the Pangong Lake. A significant portion of this lake is currently occupied by China. And this lake lies in Ladakh. So it's Chinese-occupied Ladakh that we're talking about. And the Chinese continue their attempts to salami slice Indian territory and encroach upon Indian territory. So this is something that could potentially lead to a larger conflagration. We saw a couple of years ago the Galwan clash, in which about 20 Indian soldiers attained Veergati, like we say it, and a bunch of Chinese thugs also died. Between 40 and 100 Chinese soldiers died in that. Thankfully, there was no escalation of the matter. It was contained. But this is a flashpoint, which could possibly lead to a larger war. Now, will the war become nuclear? I doubt it, because both nations are capable of inflicting significant damage on each other. The Chinese could lose everything they've worked for in the past 40 years if they try to cross certain lines with India. And even if India and China go to war and there's a nuclear exchange, I doubt if other nations will get involved. The Americans will possibly want to take advantage of the situation. If China is not doing well, maybe Russia could also possibly get involved. So this is something that could possibly lead to World War III, but the probability seems to be low to me. And when it comes to North Korea, it's essentially China's attack dog. They will do whatever China tells them to do. Maybe they may go rogue, but they are not capable of really launching very major strikes on other nations. They could possibly, if they go crazy, attack Japan or South Korea, which could possibly lead to the involvement of the US and China in the situation, which again could possibly lead to World War III, but I think the possibility is kind of low. So that's my analysis. We're not quite sure if World War III will ever happen. We don't want it to happen, but these are the potential flashpoints. Please tell us about the recession in Germany. Has India ever experienced a recession? Yes, so Germany has now officially entered into a recession. So how do we define a recession? A recession essentially means that you have 2 consecutive quarters in a year when the GDP growth is negative, which means the GDP of a nation is contracting. So Germany has now experienced 2 successive quarters in which its GDP has contracted. So that's why we are saying that Germany has now entered recession. So why has this happened? So it's directly something to do with the Ukraine conflict. Germany and the whole of Europe was receiving a lot of very cheap Russian gas. And this is the fuel that was powering the European economy and the German economy. Germany is the powerhouse of the European economy. So Germany was getting this very cheap Russian gas, which was powering the economy. Now, somebody blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and because of that, the gas flows are no longer happening. And so that's why what's happened is that Germany has now been forced to turn to the US for its gas supplies. They are now importing gas from the US at about 3 times the price they were getting from the Russians. So that's one thing. And they are also shutting down the nuclear reactors for whatever reason. Nuclear energy is a very cheap and very clean source of energy. They are shutting down the nuclear reactors. So the German government, for whatever reason, is doing things that are not beneficial for the Germany. They are not serving the national interest. They are hurting the national interest. And that's the reason why Germany has now officially entered recession. And it's quite likely that many other European nations over the coming months may possibly enter recession. So that's about the German recession. Has India ever experienced a recession? India has experienced multiple recessions. That's when the GDP growth is negative. The latest one was the 2020 recession. It started around 2020 because of the coronavirus pandemic, when the whole nation was under these lockdowns. So obviously the GDP growth will contract. So India has also experienced recessions, but right now the only large nation in the world that has a 0% chance of recession is India. So that is the situation right now. Please subscribe for more updates about my geopolitical fact-finding mission in the Ladakh Valley.